I've said many times I am as confused as I've ever been about this election cycle, predicting who might win or lose. I would not want to be a pollster and stake my reputation on what's happening right now. I don't know how you do it. This is Mike Noble is with us. Has this been as confusing for you to look at, or are the numbers just the numbers when you're doing polls?
Well, it depends which indicator you're looking at. So when we look at polling right now, what's interesting is that polling has actually never been more abundant here in Arizona, but actually it's never been more accurate or more reliable, good polling out there, such as, companies such as Monmouth University, which is an A+ rated pollster by 538. And even for us on OH Predictive Insights, a local pollster based out of Phoenix, is that, we've been tracking, I've polled this electorate of 12 times in the Arizona Public Opinion Pulse Survey, so gotten to know pretty well, and I think the data is actually pretty strong.
Let's talk about the propositions. I think the 207 and 208 happen to be two of the most important things we've seen in over a decade on the ballot. Where do we stand with 207? That started off very popular, but it looks like in some of the polling we're seeing that it's kind of fallen off. Is that true?
Well, in 207, that's marijuana,
yeah,
correct?
Marijuana.
And so the marijuana one is that it's currently sharing the best it has. So it's funny, back in 2016, when everyone was predicting it would pass, I was Chicken Little over there saying, hey, I think it's going to be close, but I think it's going to come up short. They failed by about 2.5 points. They're back again, but it's kind of a perfect storm where the opposition this time around, there was $5 million spent against it last time. This time, the opposition has been anemic, to say the least. And so it's actually the best position. Its support is in the low 60s right now. And for that one, I would actually be very shocked if it didn't pass come Election Day.
Yeah, and the opposition has been saying it's less about legalization or decriminalization. It's more about the way this proposition was written. But I don't know for the people that want it legalized if they're going to worry about the 17 pages and what's in it as long as it gets decriminalized.
Yeah, it's kind of like that terms and conditions when you get Apple. You see that? I don't think anyone
you
reads
just check
that.
the box.
Correct. And so that's the same thing with this one. And so I think it was kind of a perfect storm where Doug Ducey fought it last time, but he's already won that battle and he's termed out. And then you also have Bill Montgomery, a big opponent of it, and is now on the bench. Maricopa's county attorney is now a judge, and so really there's really been not a lot of spending or bigger public figures fighting it. And so if a tree falls in a forest and no one hears about it, so again, I'd be very surprised if marijuana didn't pass.
I think 208 is the biggest thing on the ballot in a long time. Raising taxes on the wealthy. There's an argument about who that impacts, but that tax is going to double taxes on wealthy people. Chamber of Commerce and the opponents are saying it's going to be a killer for jobs and for the economy. Proponents of it want the money for education. But in the end, where does this stand?
Well, and that's the one that right now polling shows that the yes side actually has a slight advantage. And I don't think it's so much of the details in it, is that voters for a while now, for the last 4 years, education has been a big priority for them. They know it's underfunded. They know it is. However, as probably some say, the vehicle of how they do this, since this was a union-backed initiative, in that, I see this one to be much closer and there's a much stronger opposition to it. So that one I truly feel is going to go, it could go either way, because when it comes to raising taxes in Arizonans, they may say that, but although they know, especially with these are long-term and they can have some big impacts. So that one could go either way.
And I think the best argument against it I've heard was that it's going to impact a lot of small businesses where that income level is. It's not going to impact the Fortune 500 companies, but it will impact small business.
100%.
And I've seen people's minds changed on that fact alone. Is that some of the factors that's kind of moving people in that direction?
100%, because when you look at corporations, I don't think many feel a love lost towards them. But when it comes to the small business owner, which there's a lot of them, they're also the largest employers, typically, especially here in Arizona. So when we look at these types of numbers, is that they've been doing a great job of being able to get the message out compared to like the no on the marijuana initiative. They've been really unable to get their message out. So for that one, I think is going to be definitely one to watch, but marijuana I'd be definitely more bullish on.
I am so interested in this next segment because you are going to earn your money in this one. The Trump-Biden race, Martha McSally and Mark Kelly, these races are being watched from around the country, and millions of dollars have been poured into Arizona. When we come back, OH Predictive Insights is going to tell us who they think has got the edge in these two very important races. So stick around. Let's start with Senator McSally, Mark Kelly, that race. Martha McSally paused her campaign for a while, COVID-19. Mark Kelly built up a pretty big lead, double-digit lead. But it seems like in the last week or so that really is within maybe the margin of error. Does she have enough time to catch up?
She does have enough time, but her window is very small. So on our last poll, she was actually only down by 5 points. Mark Kelly was at 50% support if the election were held today, compared to Martha McSally at 45% with 5% undecided and about 3.7% margin of error. So it is very close, but there is a edge to Mark Kelly when it comes to the polling, but it's not the other indicator. There also is the money aspect. Arizona saw a taste of what it was like to actually have a race that has very much national implications to the control of the upper chamber in Washington. And so when we're looking at this, is that we saw it broke all spending records last time. This one now dwarfs it in all comparisons. So Mark Kelly and McSally both are in the top 10 in the country among Senate candidates for spend. I mean, it's been astronomical, frankly, the type of money that they've been spending on this incredibly competitive contest.
Have you done any polling on what kind of an ad works or which specific messages are working for candidates? And if so, the hammering Martha McSally saying she voted against pre-existing conditions, or the ones about Mark Kelly in China, do you any studies on how many of those are effective and what works most?
Well, so what we know is where the messaging or where the conversation is going. Is currently there's 3 top issues here among Arizona voters. You have education, healthcare, and jobs and the economy. Think of those as like a 3-legged stool. And so there's all important independents in the middle, because you have Republicans and Democrats very much polarized. Is that independents are closer in attitudes and concerns when it comes to education and healthcare. So Democrats have 2 legs of the stool, and then Republicans, independents are closer to them when it comes to that. So why it matters is that if you're talking about jobs and the economy, and the conversations on that, it's going to be benefiting McSally. However, if it's on coronavirus or education or healthcare, things like that, it's going to be benefiting Mark Kelly when it comes to the dialogue right now. So, but right now, I think it's been the messaging. The race has been pretty consistent. McSally was very far behind. She's closed the gap. The only problem is that it would have been nice if she started closing about 2 weeks earlier, because again, she's definitely running from behind at the current moment.
So then the early voters, the 2 million voters that have already voted out of the 4.2 active they're talking about, if you're saying she's catching up now, did she lose a lot in the early voting? Is she got a lot even more catching up to do because there's less people available?
Well, yeah, correct. So when you look at Arizona, early voting was introduced back in 2004, so we're very much ahead of the game. Roughly about 70% of the electorate traditionally votes that way. However, due to the pandemic, we've seen actually voter behavior change. Since the dawn of early voting, Republicans always outpaced Democrats in early voting, and then Democrats would make up for it on Election Day. However, in 2020, where we're in an upside-down world, it makes sense that this now has totally flipped the script due to COVID, but also the concerns of COVID among Democrats, but also questions on the other side about election integrity or the post office or things like that. And so what we see is that it breaks all tradition of what we've historically seen trend lines, and Democrats have been able to get much of their early votes in, compared to you have these 4 Republican voters that you know are going to be voting. However, they're holding onto their ballot to drop it off on Election Day. The only problem with that is that gives up a strategic advantage Republicans normally enjoyed, and Democrats now have it, because you have these outstanding ballots where these people, again, what if it rains? Yeah, on Election Day, or there's a COVID spike, or they forget, etc. So you don't want to leave it on the table. So currently they have more in the bank, but much of those early votes were driven by Democrats, where we see Republicans are really holding onto their ballots right now.
Trump beat all the odds in 2016. I mean, it was in the bag for Hillary on Election Day, and he pulled out this victory. Even on election night, we had the results in 2016. Do we see the same kind of thing possibly happening now? Because I am so in my own head. One day I think it's Trump, the next day I think it's Biden, and I'm not going to be surprised by a landslide for either one. What are you looking at in numbers?
So from a national perspective, or from here in Arizona? Arizona. So what's interesting about Arizona is that, yes, you have 15 counties here in Arizona, but frankly for me, I'm really going to be only watching Maricopa County. Why? Because 6 out of 10 likely voters derive from Maricopa County. Also, it's where the biggest concentration of where the suburbs are, which has been the big shift since Trump won Arizona by 3.5 points, which was the smallest margin of any Republican that's won since the last Democrat carried Arizona, which was Bill Clinton in 1996. And so when you look at these numbers, it was very close, but where the shift is, he's within the margin of error. He's only down 3 points in that race. And what I think is ultimately going to make the difference, if Trump carries Arizona, it's not due to other things. It's because he went and hustled for it, for a lack of a better term. If you think about it, he's been out here rallying. They've been barnstorming with big profile speakers. I mean, if he ends up carrying Arizona, it's going to be purely due to the effort put in, because currently, you know, Arizona is truly a toss-up in a battleground state as you can tell by the high-profile visits and money being spent.
Yeah, it's been crazy to see the president and his team of people here. You definitely earning your money this time around. I love reading your stuff, and I hope people go to your website because it's insightful to me to see not just the what, but the why. So I really appreciate you coming here and talking to the audience. And you want to make a bold prediction? We got 30 seconds. Just give me one prediction. One lock. Give me one lock.
One lock?
Yep.
I would be very surprised if Mark Kelly blows a financial and polling advantage such that he has right now. That one, I'd be very surprised if he lands up losing come election day.
All right, appreciate it. Mike Noble, I'll be back.